Hey guys, welcome to the Nunchaku class. So, today's class is going to be all about double nunchucks. If you don't currently have both of or two pairs of chucks, that's fine. I'll show you how to do everything that we're going to do today with only one pair, but this class is going to be specifically focused on beginning double nunchucks. So, hopefully you have both of them. Go ahead and get them out now. I'll wait for you. Okay. All right, so let's begin. So the first thing that we're going to do is going to be our inward figure eight. So hopefully you've followed the series so far and you've learned how to do just our basic inward figure eight. Now remember, our inward figure eight is a little bit different than you might have seen in other nunchuck styles that do their inward figure eight like this, where they're rolling the wrist. We have the pivot point at the end of the chuck that I'm holding as opposed to in the wrist. So one of the main reasons why we do that is so that when we're doing double chucks, they're not going to hit us or collide into the other chucks whenever we're doing this. We keep them in tight. So it's spinning at the end of the chucks that we're holding, and we're able to not hit ourselves or the other chucks as we do this. So we're just going to start off with our inward figure eight. If you have to, set it down and then bring it up and then do it. And then if something happens and that happens and you mess up, set them back down and do it. I recommend at first doing it where they mirror each other, which means they're both on the inside or they're both on the outside. Inside, outside. You could also do it where they're on the same side. So they're either on the left side of my arm or the right side of my arm. So they're going one direction and then the other one. But usually it's going to be a little bit easier if we do both of them at the same time, or if they're mirroring each other, and as opposed to going in the same direction. I find it's a little bit easier when we're first learning this, but that's going to be up to you. If you want to switch it, you can switch in the middle, just like that. It's just going to be one extra spin on one side, and then you just go right back in here. So right now, just kind of practice this. If you only have one pair of chucks right now, then what you can do is you can just practice one side here, give it a few spins, and then raise it up, and then drop it right back down to the other side. Give it a few spins here. Of course, this class is focused on double chucks, so if you have both your chucks, go ahead and keep practicing on both of them. You can go as slow as you need to, or you can pick up the pace. However you need to. Keep going. Now, here's a little exercise. If this feels a little bit too easy for you at this moment, because maybe you've done this before, then what you can do that makes it a little bit more difficult is you can start opening your arms up wider. So see how now the chucks are pointed off to the sides, 90 degrees away from where I'm facing, and then I can practice bringing them in closer. So if we get our hands further away from each other and then closer, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. Sometimes you'll accidentally do something like that, and it'll spin and mess up, or you'll end up hitting your own wrist whenever you're doing that. So it makes it a little bit more challenging if this is already too easy for you. If it's already too easy for you, good. All right, so now we're going to do basically the same thing, except for we're going to do it with our outward figure eights. So our inward figure eight, again, is going and spinning inwards towards us. Outward figure eight is going out away from us. So we're going to do the same exact thing. So this time we're going to start here, over our shoulders, except for now we're going with our outward figure eights as opposed to our inward figure eights. If you make a mistake, just drop them down, set them back up over your shoulder, and again, going with our double outward figure eights. If you only have one pair of chucks, then you can just do a few outward figure eights, catch it underneath, simple up, switch, and then do the same thing on the other side. Outward figure eight, catch, up, switch, other side. Catch, up, switch, other side. Just like before now, if this is too easy for you, just holding them right out in front of you. Practice opening them up. And if you hit yourself while you're doing that, don't worry about it. And close them. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're not doing this with our wrist. If we do that, we're going to end up hitting our chucks against each other. So that's not something that we want to do. We want to have them spinning at the end of the chuck that I'm holding as the pivot point. You might find your shoulders get a little bit tired. They're going to be tired by the end of this class. Don't worry. It's all right. Now I'm doing the mirror version. You could also do the ones where they're going to the left and then to the right. Or you can do the mirror. Whichever ones you want. If you want to practice going between them, feel free to do so. The transition between the mirror and then changing to one side to the other is just going to be an extra little loop. So it would be like an outside spin, just like this. I'm just adding an extra loop onto one of the figure eights, and that'll help me change it from whichever I was doing. If I was doing mirror, I go to the same side. If I was doing the same side, I go to the mirror. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to transition to our next one, and that's going to be our outward figure eight strike. So our outward figure eight strike is essentially the same thing, kind of, it's the same thing. So now when we do these ones, we alternate which hand's doing it, and our outward figure eight strike is going to be inside, outside, down. So if we were doing it with just one chuck, we'd go here, and we'd catch it. Now what we're going to do for double chucks is we're actually not going to catch in the armpit. We're going to allow it to hit and bounce back up to the top. Allow it to hit and bounce back up to the top. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show the single chuck version first. If you're doing single chucks, then you're going to do this. Here, oh, that's more than one. So outward figure eight strike. 1, 2, up, bounce, switch. 1, 2, switch. So you're just going to do that. Inside, outside, hit, up. And you're doing catch, switch, inside, outside, hit, up. Now if you're going to be doing the double chucks, it's going to look like this. So we're going to start here. We're going to go 1, and then we're going to go right to the other. Now we're going to change up how we do this in a second, but this is how I want you to practice it for right now. So in, out, bounce. In, out, bounce. One arm goes, then the other arm goes. If you're used to catching it at first, try not to catch it in between. It's going to slow you down when you start picking up the speed on some of our other techniques, so try not to do this and then raise it up. Try to hit it and just let it bounce. Inside, outside, bounce. Make sure we're going to the inside first, not to the outside first. Inside, outside, bounce. So you'll notice a little bit later on that a lot of the double nunchuck techniques are going to be 3 counts. So this is a 3 count too. 1, 2, 3 is the bounce and then up. Inside, outside, bounce, up. 1, 2, 3, up. If you can start picking up the pace a little bit. Now when I do this, I push the hip forward of the same side arm. So if I'm going to be striking with my right hand, my right hip goes forward. Left hand, left hip goes forward. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to mesh those in a little bit closer together. So instead of doing right hand, stop, left hand, stop, we're going to go right hand, and now as this one's bouncing here, my next one's going to go. So now I'm not having any pause in between, so there's no stationary. I'm going to go 1, 2, and then on 3, when this one's coming down, this one is shooting out. On 3, it shoots out. So again, I was telling you it's broken down into 3 counts. 1, 2, that's 3. So as the third count goes, that's when I shoot out for the next one. 1, 2, shoot out. 1, 2, shoot out. 1, 2, shoot out. And so now they start just kind of meshing together. I'm doing the exact same thing, except for now they're just a little bit closer together. I'm not waiting anymore. So I want you to go ahead and give that a shot. I'm still pushing the hip forward. whenever I do this. Keep going. If this is really easy for you, then you can do what I'm doing now, and you can just start walking around. Start changing the direction that you're looking, while still maintaining that same pace. Again, if you're just now joining and you only have one chuck, you're going to go here, bounce, up, switch, there, bounce, up, switch. And now if you're only doing single chuck right now, and this is too easy, again, we can make it harder by moving around. Change your angles. So try not to just stay facing the same way the whole time. You can practice footwork as you're doing it. If you have any specific footwork patterns that you like to practice, by all means, go ahead and do that. If not, keep practicing your double chucks if you've got them both. If this is too difficult for you, slow it back. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. You might have to do that first. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. It took me a little while to be able to put them together. This was easy for me doing this, but whenever I had to move the other hand at the same time while this one is still moving, that's what took me a little while to get, and that might be the same case for you, and that's fine. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next technique. So this one is going to be our alternating diagonal strikes. So let me show you what a diagonal strike looks like. I go from shoulder to hip, back to the shoulder. So this is actually one of the easier ones in my opinion. So with both of them, it's going to look like this. 1, 2. Here, here. Now from the side, this is going to look like this. I'm reaching out on the strike, but I'm staying in close on the way back. Out, in close, out, in close, out, in close. I'm not trying to hit on the way back up, so I don't have this distance for both of these. I'm out, and then I'm keeping it in close. Out, in close, out, in close. So go ahead and practice that. If you are doing the single chucks, it's going to look like this. Out, up. Raise it here. Out, up. Here. We got double. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Now you're probably thinking, wow, this is too easy. All right, so let's start meshing them together. Now, the way we mesh these ones together is as this one is coming up, this one's already coming out. So one's going back to the chambered position, and the other one's shooting out. Remember what I said about the one that's coming back up comes in closer. So they're not both out. One is in close, and one is far. And now if you notice this sound behind me, the clacking sound, don't worry about that. That happens a lot with this one. So I go 1, 2. Now try to keep that other hand pushing out as one is staying in close. That's going to be a little bit more difficult than just going here, where they're staying at the same distance. Striking arm goes out, retracting arm stays in. Now, if this again is too easy for you, move around. No one said you had to stay still. You can attach it with a foot if you want, or you can just kind of free flow, move around whichever direction you want as you do this. Completely up to you. So you might find this one's a little bit easier than the one we just did, the alternating outward figure 8 strikes. Those ones are probably the hardest ones that we're going to do today. So if you got that one down, awesome. You got down the hardest one. If you didn't get it down, well, that's fine, because that was the hardest one. At least for today. There's going to be more difficult ones, but for today, that one should have been the most difficult. Most of this is just really coordination that we're practicing. All right, so now what we're going to do, we're going to move on to the next one. So our next one's going to be our triangle strike, or alternating triangle strikes. A triangle strike is basically a diagonal strike, except for we cut back across the body. So we're going to go diagonal, and now instead of going straight back over the shoulder, it's going to go here, over, and then up. So I want you to think of this, it's kind of like a seatbelt. So it goes shoulder to hip, hip to other hip, and then just raises back up. Or you can think of it as a triangle, which is why they're typically referred to as a triangle strike. So now, when we first start off, we're going to start off this way. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and practice that for right now. If you have single chucks, you're going to go 1, 2, catch, switch. 1, 2, catch, switch. 1, 2, catch, switch. 1, 2, catch. Same strike, you're just switching hands each time. So shoulder to hip, hip to hip, hip to shoulder. Diagonal, across, up. And you switch, diagonal, across, up. All right, now, hopefully you have both chucks. Practice 1, and then 2. Now, this is easy for you. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start progressing to the hard one. If this is not easy for you, just practice it just like this. One hand, other hand. Now, just like our alternating outward figure 8 strikes, when I had the count 1, 2, 3, and on the third one, that's when I struck out with my other hand. It's going to be the same way on this one. So 1, 2, 3. So as 3 is happening, I'm going out for that 1, 2, and now as 3 is happening, I'm shooting my other hand out. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to go across, and now as it raises up, the diagonal strike goes. So now it's a 1, 2. Next one goes 1, 2. Next one goes 1, 2. Next one goes 1, 2. As you're retracting the other one back. So now there's no hand that's being stalled. They're moving basically at the exact same time, but they're slightly different in the positioning where they're at. So you can think of one hand follows the other if you want, or you can just think on that third count, I strike. You're going to have to slow down at first to do it, so you just start off one hand. 1, 2. If it helps, pause here, and now you're going to strike with the hand that's up as you raise it. Bring it across, strike with the hand that's up as you raise it. Across, strike. Across, strike and raise. Across, strike and raise. So if you have ever seen people do double nunchuck stuff at tournaments, this is one of the ones that people will go, and they'll keep it really close here, and they'll go really fast. And some people have these padded ones, and it makes an awesome sound when they're doing it. The wooden ones don't make the same sound because they don't have that slappy impact type sound, but it's going to be that same motion. Now, what a lot of those people end up doing, because they're doing it more for show than for any sort of a strike, is they keep their arms in really close as they do it. So if you're looking here, my elbows really aren't leaving far off my body. But now when you're doing the strike, I want you to think of it like strike out, just like in our diagonal strike. And now I'm in close, strike out, in close, in close. So I'm reaching on that diagonal portion of the strike. It goes out. And then I stay in close for the 2 and 3 counts. 1 is out, 2 and 3 are in close. Just as before, if this is too easy for you, move around. No one said we have to stay still. want, you can start picking up the pace. If this is too fast, slow down. Go at whatever pace that you need. I've been doing this for a good while, so I might speed up unconsciously, but I do remember when I first started doing double chucks, I was not going fast at all. It was, what goes next? Okay, this comes across here. Ow, I hit my knee. Ow, I hit something else. Why did I hit my elbow? So if that's happening to you right now, it's okay. It happened to me for sure. All right, now we're gonna move on to the next strike. And now the next strike it's basically the same thing. It really isn't much different. The only difference is the direction that the first strike is going. So it's gonna be a 3 count, again, what a surprise. But now I'm gonna do it, it's gonna be a side strike essentially, but it'll be adapted for double chucks. So a side strike looks like this and comes underneath. This one's gonna be, it's called a cross strike when we do it this way, but it's horizontal with the first one. So our triangle strike moves diagonal for the first strike, for the first count. Our cross strike is horizontal and comes up. Horizontal, other side of the hip, straight up. So the only difference is now, instead of keep starting with my elbow up and going this diagonal motion, I'm gonna drop my elbow down and I'm gonna move horizontally, just like this. Bring it across and up. Across and up. So this is called a cross strike. It goes across the body to strike. So the goal in this one is just to make that strike as horizontal as possible when you're doing it. Really differentiate. So I'm going to do, just so you can see, I'm going to do a diagonal strike with my left hand, and I'm going to do a cross strike with my right hand here, so that you can see the difference between my cross strike and my triangle strike. And sometimes I call my triangle strike my diagonal strike because the first one is diagonal, so I apologize if I've been mixing that up. But I hope that here you can just see the direction that the chuck is moving and which one is the cross strike and which one is the diagonal strike. If you notice, they work at the exact same pace, so they work together like that very easily. Right now I just want you working on it, making it horizontal, going one and then to the next. Again, if you need to go one hand, isolate it, other hand, isolate it. That's no problem. If you're working single chucks, then it's going to be just like the triangle, the triangle strike when you do it. Go across, up, raise it up. Across, up, 1, 2, 3, pull it out. 1, 2, 3. So that's the single hand adaptation for this. Double hand, again, here, here, and now when you start to feel more comfortable, as you probably already guessed we're going to do, when this one is raising it up, this strikes out. As this raises up, this strikes out. Hips turn with that strike. If you look at the knot in my belt, you can see that it turns 45 degrees to my left and then 45 degrees to my right, depending on which hand is striking. When that becomes easy for you, start to change. Start to move around. Now check, is that strike going horizontal, that first strike? Is it horizontal or is it diagonal? All right, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to do 4 of the techniques that we just did in order. So we're not going to do the inward figure eights, the inward or the outward figure eights. We're not going to do those. But we're going to start off with our outward figure eight strike. So go outward figure eight strike. Alternating. If you're doing a single hand, do as I showed before. Alternating hands each time. And now we're going to go into our diagonal strikes. Try to transition right into the diagonal strikes. Now we're going to go into our triangle strikes. So just going back across the hip before we raise it up now. From here we're going to go into our cross strikes. Now the first strike is much more horizontal. It's not going diagonally. And now we're going to go back to our outward figure eights. And then we're going to go diagonal. Diagonal is kind of a weird one. I like to put it in the middle because it's a 2 count all the way through. All the other ones are going to be 3 counts, but the diagonal one is a 2 count. So it might throw off your beat for a second. And now whenever we're transitioning to the next one's going to be triangle strike. I want you to just think which hand's going to start with it. For me, I'm going to start with my right hand. So now the right hand goes, and now I'm doing triangle, and then the left hand follows with the triangle. So really know not just what technique is coming next, but know which hand is going to start it. So my next technique that we're going to do is going to be our cross strike. So I know my right hand's going to do it now. So I go cross strikes. I know exactly when it's going to happen. So I plan, okay, it's coming back up over my shoulder. That means I can prepare for the next one. So now on my next right hand, I'm going to do outward figure 8 strike, alternating. And you can pick a hand that starts it. You can start each time with your right hand, or you can start each time with your left hand. It doesn't really matter. You can alternate. The key is that you told yourself that that hand's going to be the one that starts it. If you're not sure where you're going to start it, that's when you might fumble a little bit. So I know now I'm going to start it on my left hand for my diagonal strikes. Reach out, keep it in close as you're coming back up. And now, should I do left hand or right hand? Let's do left hand's going to start my next triangle strike. And since I've been doing left hand for all the other ones, I'm going to do left hand on my cross strikes. All right, so I'm going to quickly recap what we've covered today. What we started off with was our inward figure eights, doing both hands at the same time. If you are doing single hand, inward figure 8, and then you raise it up, inward figure 8 with the other one, and raise it up, inward figure 8. The next thing that we went over was our outward figure 8s, not our outward figure 8 strikes, outward figure 8s. So we're here, and you again have this mirror version, which is what I'm doing right now, or you've got this, which I call as the same side, because they're either both going to the left or they're both going towards the right. The single hand version is going to here, catch, up, switch. Here, catch, up, switch. Just alternating sides. Then we had our outward figure 8 strike. So our outward figure 8 strike, the single hand was the same that I just showed, so I'm not going to show that again. And then we have the outward figure 8 strike on both. We bounce, raise it up, bounce, raise it up, and then we start meshing them together. So on the third count of 1 is the first count of the other hand. Then we went for our diagonal strikes. So our diagonal strikes went out and then in close on the way back up. Out, in close, out, in close. So as one's coming up, the other one is coming out. Our single hand version looked like this. Out, and then we would catch, switch, out, catch, switch, out, back, catch, and switch. After that, we went over our triangle strike. Our triangle strike went like a seatbelt. So diagonal, across the hips, then raising up. On the third count of 1 is the first count of the other. We'll go here. This is our triangle strikes. The single hand version here. And then as it comes up, I raise it up, switch sides. Raise it up, switch sides. Raise it up, switch sides. Again, now we're going striking out. Arm is extended out and then in close on 2 and 3 counts. After that, we had our cross strikes, which was basically the exact same thing, except for now we're horizontal on the first strike, back across and up, alternating here. The third count is the first count of the other hand. Just like with the triangle strike, the hands are doing the same thing when you're doing single chucks. Across, up, here. Make sure we turn our hips as we do that. And then we just went down the list doing our outward figure 8, our diagonal strike, our triangle strike, and then our cross strike we did a few times, and then we told ourselves exactly when we're going to switch. So hopefully you enjoyed today's class, practicing double nunchucks. If this was your first time doing double chucks, it might have been really difficult. It might have been really easy, depending on how much you've actually practiced these specific techniques. But it might have been really difficult, and if it was, that's fine. The key to this is to not give up. Just keep trying, all right? So hopefully you enjoyed today's class, and have a great day. All right, now let's see if there's any questions. I think I saw some comments. Someone asked, is this going to go on the channel afterwards as a full video? Yes, it will. Hello, Leandro from Argentina. And Anna from Brazil. All right, no questions. All right, anybody have any questions? Give me real quick if you have any questions before I hit end. All right, I'm going to go with there's no questions. I hope you guys enjoyed the class, and I will see you next time.